Hi, this is Bill Kenower for Author Magazine, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with DJ MacHale, author of the Pendragon series. How are you doing, DJ?
I am doing great, Bill. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Why don't you start us off by telling us a bit about your history? I was under the impression you started in television. Is that correct?
Yes, I've been producing, writing, and directing kids' TV for more years than I care to admit to right now. Starting with back in the '80s when I would do ABC after-school specials, and I had a series on HBO called Encyclopedia Brown Boy Detective, and I did this kind of irreverent version of it for HBO because it was a tough nut to crack because it was about this young boy detective who solved all these crimes in this town, and how do you make that believable? So we essentially turned it into a comedy.
Right.
And from then I started to create my own show. So probably the show I'm best known for is a show I did on Nickelodeon for years called Are You Afraid of the Dark? So it was all over the world. I was the guy who scared kids all over the world for about 8 or 9 years. And I have a show on the air right now called Flight 29 Down.
So you're still producing television?
Yeah, well, we finished up Flight 29 Down about a year and a half ago, maybe. So when I started writing Pendragon, it was kind of simultaneously with Flight 29 Down happening. So it was half the year I spent on Pendragon, the other half the year I spent doing TV. So it was kind of fun wearing a lot of hats and changing my thinking, changing the writing process, which is so different from one to the other. But now that show is complete, so now I'm just an author man with my patched sleeves and my pipe.
So that's full-time now. You're just writing fiction full-time.
Yes, it's an amazing thing that this wasn't the plan. We'll talk a little bit about Pendragon, but when I came up with the idea, I never really expected it to even get published, let alone do well. But an amazing thing happened is that it did get published, and it did do really well, and so it opened up a lot of opportunities for me to continue writing books, which I love now. It's just a whole different. So it wasn't the plan, but you never know where life's going to take you. So now I'm full-time author man. And I actually have a suit with a big A on it.
Do you? Well, when you conceived of it, did you think maybe you were thinking of a series, a television series, or did you know it was a book?
Well, I always knew it was a book for a very specific reason. I was in the middle of working on a pilot for a network that will go unnamed. That from the time that I first pitched it until the time that they said, sorry, we're not going to do the show because we're not doing dramas anymore, was 2 years.
Oh, God.
And if you know, with TV, when you're a creator of a TV show, when you sign on the dotted line, you sign to be exclusive to that show for the run of the show, or for at least a year or two of the show, which is fine if the show goes to series.
Right.
And it's also fine if the show doesn't happen in a reasonable amount of time. Right. In this case, this 2-year period, I was locked into making the show, waiting for them to make decisions, and it's like, I have to do something. I got to make a living. I have to do something. Right. So I came up with actually a number of ideas, a number of very specific kind of adventure ideas, and I was deciding which one would I like to write when I realized, well, why don't I write them all? Why don't I make this a book series and then come up with the thread that ties them all together?
That's how you did it.
Yeah, so it's a little bit backwards. So, I mean, I had, if anyone is familiar with the series, I mean, I had an idea for a society that became addicted to a video game, and another one about a society that was run by a store, a discount store, you know, all these kind of odd ideas. So the unifying factor between them all, so then it's like, well, how do I tie these together? It's like, well, I always write action adventure about young people, so I'll create this character of Bobby Pendragon, who is the connective link between all of them. Right. And so once I made that decision, there was no way it would work on television.
Yeah.
And it was way too big for a movie.
Right.
So the only logical outlet was a book series.